Welcome to our continuing series, Questions and Answers from the works of Sri Aurobindo and the Mother. Today, Delight, Part 4, from Sri Aurobindo. This recoil or dislike is the primary origin of ethics, but is not itself ethical. The fear of the deer for the tiger, the rage of the strong creature against its assailant, is a vital recoil of the individual delight of existence from that which threatens it. In the progress of the mentality, it refines itself into repugnance, dislike, disapproval. Disapproval of that which threatens and hurts us. Approval of that which flatters and satisfies, refine into the conception of good and evil to oneself, to the community, to others than ourselves, to other communities than ours, and finally into the general approval of good, the general disapproval of evil. But throughout, the fundamental nature of the thing remains the same. Man desires self-expression, self-development, in other words, the progressing play in himself of the conscious force of existence that is his fundamental delight. That which is common to all is, we have seen, the satisfaction of conscious force of existence, developing itself into forms and seeking in that development its delight. From that satisfaction or delight of self-existence, it evidently began, for it is that which is normal to it, to which it clings, which it makes its base. But it seeks new forms of itself, and in the passage to higher forms, there intervenes the phenomenon of pain and suffering, which seems to contradict the fundamental nature of its being. This, and this alone, is the root problem. How shall we solve it? Shall we say that Satchidananda is not the beginning and end of things, but the beginning and end is nihil, an impartial void, itself nothing, but containing all potentialities of existence or non-existence, consciousness or non-consciousness, delight or undelight? We must first make it clear to ourselves that just as when we speak of universal consciousness, we mean something different from, more essential and wider than the waking mental consciousness of the human being, so also when we speak of the universal delight of existence, we mean something different from, more essential and wider than the ordinary emotional and sensational pleasure of the individual human creature. Pleasure, joy, and delight, as man uses the words, are limited and occasional movements which depend on certain habitual causes and emerge, like their opposites, pain and grief, which are equally limited and occasional movements, from a background other than themselves. Delight of being is universal, illimitable, and self-existent, not dependent on particular causes, the background of all backgrounds, from which pleasure, pain, and other more neutral experiences emerge. When delight of being seeks to realize itself as delight of becoming, it moves in the movement of force, and itself takes different forms of movement, of which pleasure and pain are positive and negative currents. Subconscient in matter, superconscient beyond mind, this delight seeks in mind and life to realize itself by emergence in the becoming. In the increasing self-consciousness of the movement, its first phenomena are dual and impure, move between the poles of pleasure and pain, but it aims at its self-revelation in the purity of a supreme delight of being, which is self-existent and independent of objects and causes. Just as Satchidananda moves towards the realization of the universal existence in the individual and of the form-exceeding consciousness in the form of body and mind, so it moves towards the realization of universal, self-existent, and objectless delight in the flux of particular experiences and objects. Those objects we now seek as stimulating causes of a transient pleasure and satisfaction. Free, possessed of self, we shall not seek, but shall possess them as reflectors rather than causes of a delight which eternally exists. In the egoistic human being, the mental person, emergent out of the dim shell of matter, delight of existence is neutral, semi-latent, still in the shadow of the subconscious, hardly more than a concealed soil of plenty, covered by desire, with a luxuriant growth of poisonous weeds and hardly less poisonous flowers, the pains and pleasures of our egoistic existence. When the divine conscious force, working secretly in us, has devoured these growths of desire, when, in the image of the Rig Veda, the fire of God has burnt up the shoots of earth, that which is concealed at the roots of these pains and pleasures, their cause and secret being, the sap of delight in them, will emerge in new forms, not of desire, but of self-existent satisfaction, which will replace mortal pleasure by the immortal's ecstasy. And this transformation is possible because these growths of sensation and emotion are, in their essential being, the pains no less than the pleasures. That delight of existence which they seek but fail to reveal. Fail because of division, ignorance of self, and egoism. Namaste.